Hi everyone, welcome to Leisrealtalk. It's good to be back. All right, I had a great trip to Taiwan. So I just got back a few days ago. All right, I hope everyone had a great weekend. It's Tuesday, but it feels like Monday for some reason. Um, in my last live stream, which was Thursday, it was Thursday. No, it was Tuesday. Let me think. It was last Tuesday, actually a week ago. I spoke about the possibility that Xi Jinping's political enemies within the party is using the rumor about Qin Gang to launch an offense against him because Qin Gang was promoted by Xi Jinping on an unprecedented fast track. In dealing with the situation, Xi Jinping is caught in a catch-22 situation. If he removes Qin, his political enemies would have succeeded. If he doesn't remove him, his tarnished reputation would become a political liability for Xi. So the delay in announcing Qing's absence or in explaining his absence reflected Xi Jinping's dilemma. But the longer he waits, the more he pays a political cost, right? So after 1 month of speculations, rumors, and gossips, we finally got an update today about the fate of China's missing foreign minister. Today, the National People's Congress announced that he is relieved of the duty of foreign minister, and the position will be filled by his predecessor, Wang Yi, who will be the foreign minister for the second time. Like I said in my last live stream, we're not interested in the missing minister drama because we are interested in the Qin Gang drama, not because of the juicy details about his affairs with the TV host, but rather we're interested in the behind-the-scene maneuver and power struggles within the CCP leadership. From there, we can assess Xi Jinping's control of the regime and its stability. So let's now talk about Beijing's announcement today. To get an idea of Xi Jinping's political predicament that this announcement reveals. So we'll talk about first the unusual ways or the unusual way in which Xi Jinping carefully dealt with Qin Gang's removal, and then we'll talk about how the removal will affect Sino-US relations. So those are the agenda for today. Now, first things first, the unusual way in which he carefully dealt with his removal. There are three reasons why I say this announcement is unusual. The first is Xi Jinping wants to avoid making this personnel change look different from any other personnel changes. He wanted to appear normal. Why do I say that? Well, the National People's Congress made two personnel changes today, not just one, but two. Qin Gang and then the Minister of Foreign Affairs position changed hands is just one of the two. The other personnel change is the change of the governor of China's central bank. Yi Gang has stepped down and is replaced by the newly appointed party secretary of the People's Bank of China, who today became the governor of the bank. His name is Pan Gongsheng. So by having another accompanying set of personnel change, Qin Gang's removal is a soft landing. It appears normal, right? Just like how Yi Gang is replaced by Pan Gongsheng, nobody is questioning why Yi Gang is replaced. So that's the first thing. The first reason why I say this announcement is unusual. And the second point is that Xi Jinping appears to want to protect Qin Gang. No reason was given to explain his removal, nor was there any investigation announced by the Central Commission of Discipline and Inspection. This tells us that Qing's removal wasn't attributable to disloyalty to Xi Jinping or collusions with foreign agencies, as many rumors have suggested. It's most likely the result of internal political power struggles engineered to target Xi. The reason why I say this announcement is unusual, I want to share with you. If you read Chinese, maybe you can appreciate this image. Let me see if uh, this is actually the official statement from Xinhua News. I highlighted the word 坚韧. So it says, 免去秦刚坚韧的外交部部长职务. So those of you who speak Chinese will understand the word 坚韧. What it means is it highlights his second job, right? So the announcement used words that described the minister's job as his second job. It's not his primary job. Okay, so let me come back. So it sounds like this minister's position isn't that important, and his primary job did not change. By the way, the same announcement did not use the same wording for Yi Gang. So you don't see the 坚韧, the word used for the other personnel change. So what's Qing's other job, or what's his primary job? Well, it's his title of being the state counselor. So as of now, although Qing Gang his name has been removed from the website of the foreign ministry, he still keeps the title of state counselor, which is a vice state level position within the state council. The position has the same administrative ranking as vice premier, but has lower political ranking after the vice premier, but above minister's level. So this makes Qing still one of the top 68 top leaders of the CCP. Currently, there are 5 state councilors. Li Shangfu, the Minister of Defense, the guy who refused to meet with the U.S. Secretary of Defense, he is also one of the state councilor. So is Wang Xiaohong, the chief police officer of CCP. So these are the 2 of the other 4 state councilors, and the other 2, one is the woman who is in charge of like veterans affair within the state council, and the other is the secretary, the like administrative officer of the state council. So there are 5 of them, and Qin Gang is still one of the 5. The wording of the announcement subtly emphasized that his primary job is intact. This means that Qing's political career isn't over yet. This will give Xi Jinping more time in deciding what to do with him. With the passing of time, maybe he can reassign Qin Gang to another post, or even bring him back to the foreign ministry, depending on how he deals with the situation internally. So that's the second reason why I said this announcement is a little unusual. And the third point is the timing of the announcement. Like I said, Xi Jinping couldn't make up his mind on how to deal with the missing minister or the minister, but he was forced to make a decision after 1 month. His removal is approved by an unusually scheduled meeting. Now, the Standing Committee of China's rubber stamp legislature, the National People's Congress, approves personnel changes, and they meet every other month at the end of the even month. So they meet at the end of February, April, June, August, right? And so the last meeting was end of June, and the next one will be end of August. And Xi Jinping couldn't wait until the end of August. So a special meeting was arranged today, on July 25th, to make this personnel change. And when they have these bi-monthly meetings, they usually have it on multiple days. It's a multiple-day event. But this special meeting today was only a one-day event. So this meeting was called, I think, just, to to approve, quote unquote, to rubber stamp this personnel change. This showed a sense of urgency on the part of Xi Jinping. He couldn't wait anymore, as the minister's absence has become an international event. United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary James Cleverly postponed a planned trip to Beijing this month due to Qing's absence. So after 1 month of rumor mills and speculations and gossips, any delay will hurt Xi Jinping politically. So you could tell that he does feel pressure. By the way, the rumors about Qin Gang's absence have been going wild in China, and there are so many different variations and flavors. Some said that he has already died in a hospital, and others said that he was compromised by foreign spies. The most incredible one that I heard is this. Don't laugh, but I did when I heard it. This one said that he wanted to undergo transgender surgery and that he would be the world's first active duty minister who would transform his gender. Okay? All right. Whoever came up with that rumor must have the Americans or the Biden administration in mind, but because the Chinese are not interested, this kind of rumor does not interest the Chinese at all. I think that whoever came up with that rumor probably has the Americans in mind. Anyways, but there are just so many different wild rumors about his absence. So this just shows you the longer he waits, the more Xi Jinping would suffer politically. By the way, the CCP's great censors have been removing and filtering rumors about Qin Gang, but have left rumors about his mistress unfiltered. All right, so I just gave the 3 reasons that made me think that this announcement is unusual. But these reasons, it shows you that it validates that one, that Qin Gang is not compromised due to some foreign agency or foreign spy, or he's not compromised or involved in some kind of foreign spy scandals. Because if that were the case, I don't think Xi Jinping would kept his other position, his state councilor position now, and he would be investigated and severely punished. So that didn't happen. So it really make me think that he is the victim of an internal political struggle targeted at Xi Jinping, because he is perceived as one of Xi Jinping's favorites, and he's promoted on a fast track. So that's just my assessment of the situation. Okay, now let's talk about what does this mean for Sino-US relations. This has to do with Qin Gang's replacement. So who is taking over his position now? Well, the good old Wang Yi, right? Who had been China's foreign minister for 10 years and was just promoted to the director of CCP's Foreign Affairs Office, which makes him the highest ranking diplomat in China. Now, the Chinese government has 2 tracks of official positions, the party positions and then the government positions. So for the government positions, you have the foreign ministry, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs is the highest ranking official in that track, in the government track, which falls under the State Council. And then the party, the CCP, also has a Foreign Affairs Office, and its director has a higher political standing or ranking over the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So even though the position, even though Wang Yi's official title is only the director, but that director carries more weight than the minister position, because in China, all party positions has higher precedence over government positions because the party rules everything. So by putting Wang Yi back to his old job, Xi Jinping has three problems that make him worry. Number one is Wang's age. Wang will be 70 years old this October, and this is 2 years over the official retirement age for CCP officials at 68. So age is the first issue. So if Wang Yi were to finish his full term, 5-year term, he will be 75 at the end of this term, and we know as the foreign minister, he would travel extensively, and I don't know if Xi Jinping will keep him that long, for 5 years in that position. And then the second issue or problem is Wang doesn't have U.S. experience. Since U.S.-China relations is the number one priority for China's foreign affairs, U.S. experience has been a prerequisite to China's foreign minister, of China's foreign ministers in the past 20 years. So if you look at the foreign ministers in the past 20 years, from Li Zhaoxin, Yang Jiechi to Qin Gang, all had played the role of the ambassador, China's ambassador to the U.S. And they are U.S. experts. And Wang is the only exception. So you said, well, if he's the exception, so how come he was the foreign minister for 10 years? That's because while he was the foreign minister for 10 years, he had two helpers. One is China's former ambassador to U.S., Cui Tiankai, served as the ambassador to U.S. for 8 years. So 8 out of that 10 years, Cui was the ambassador. That continuity and experience helped make up for Wang Yi's lack of experience in U.S. affairs. And also, the director of the CCP's foreign affairs during that time was Yang Jiechi, who also was China's ambassador to the U.S. and also a U.S. expert. And Yang was said to be a good friend with the Bush family. They call him the Tiger. So in the CCP's leadership lineup of their foreign affairs team, you have like Wang Yi. Wang Yi is a Japan expert. He studied Japanese in college and was an ambassador to Japan. So Wang is considered a Japan expert. So his lack of U.S. experience was made up by having a strong ambassador to the U.S. and also having a U.S. expert who played the role of director of CCP's Foreign Affairs Office. So he has two strong U.S. experts backing him up during those 10 years, right? So now Yang Jiechi has retired. Now Wang Yi has to play both roles. He is not only the foreign minister, he is also the director of CCP's foreign affairs. So he's playing two roles. And he does not have anyone like Yang Jiechi to back him up. Also, his ambassador to the U.S., sorry, I just forgot his name, Xie Feng, right, is new. He has only been in that role for what? Since January, for 7 months, not even 6.5 months. So in terms of the leadership team, in China's foreign affairs apparatus, there's no true U.S. expert from Xi Jinping's perspective, and that's problem number two by having Wang Yi play the role of a foreign minister. And the third problem is precisely the problem that Wang plays both roles. Because from the perspective of CCP, shall we say, dictator, they like to counterbalance their subordinates so that no one becomes too powerful under them. And Xi Jinping was fully aware that Qin Gang and Wang Yi don't really see eye to eye. So having Qin Gang play the role of a foreign minister and Wang Yi play the role of a director of foreign affairs, they kind of they serve as a counterbalance to each other. Now having Wang Yi play, you know, both roles, he becomes too powerful. He becomes too powerful in determining China's foreign policies. And this can be worrisome to a communist dictator like Xi Jinping. Um, so the question is, will he keep Wang Yi there for long? I don't think so. I think this is only a temporary solution for him. I think he is looking for someone else to ultimately replace Wang Yi and play the role of a foreign minister. So right now, the how to say, the not having an American expert on his foreign affairs leadership team and having to rely on Wang Yi solely on international relations and one's old age can make Xi Jinping restless at night. And he already suffers from what I call a dictator's syndrome, which is the syndrome of being disconnected from reality due to his staff or officials giving him limited information. I think Xi Jinping will inevitably become more authoritarian in decision making and more controlling in his relationship with his officials or subordinates. And this can be totally counterproductive in the already troubling or the troublesome Sino-US relations. So that's just my quick assessment of today's announcement. And I hope this is helpful. Let me see if people have questions for me. And those of you who have joined my live stream before know that I go through the questions rather quickly. So if you want me to answer your questions, put my name in the front so I know it's addressed to me. All right, let me see if people have questions for me. All right. Let me go through the super chats first. Oh, okay, there aren't any. Okay, so that makes my job easy. Let me just see if there are other questions. Okay, I'm picking questions randomly from Mitsu. Sorry for the first comment I made. I meant verify, not validate. I'm sorry I missed the first question. Okay, let me go to the next one to save time. Lei from Sumilan. Lei will answer questions. Okay, that's a comment. Sorry, that's not a question. Let me see. Well, there are a lot of discussions among you. That's great. So, okay, from Steve Cam. Great job, Lei. It appears Xi's house is on fire, and anything he does seems to fan the flames. That's a good, that's an accurate observation. I think in terms of the internal chaos and then the external crisis, I think, didn't Joe Biden say that nobody wants to be in Xi Jinping's position? I think that's a true assessment. Nobody wants to be in his position. But also at the same time, CCP leaders have, are trained. They love chaos. They do not love peace. They thrive better in chaos. That's just that's their upbringing and their training, and their ideology is based on worldwide chaos. So if we put ourselves in their positions, we will worry, right? We would panic, but they don't. They, they might be enjoying, handling these chaos because they don't care. The reason people in other parts of the world will panic because we have reputations to worry about. We worry about consequences. We worry about what our people would think of us, right? And they control the propaganda machine, they control the state apparatus, they could suppress people's opinions and views, so they don't really care. Oh, they care as not as much as we do. All right, from Stephen Gilly, why did it take so long to remove him? I arrived late. Sorry if you already answered. Why did it take so long to remove him? Because he couldn't make up his mind. Because Xi Jinping is caught in a catch-22 situation. Watch my last live stream on this subject, which was, I think it was last Tuesday. It was a week ago today that I talked about. I think this entire missing minister drama could be the result of an internal political struggle, and Xi Jinping has been caught in a situation that it's difficult for him to decide one way or the other, but he has to now. Um, from Joe Welsh, Lei from Cherokee Nation. Okay, welcome. All right, Lei from Pink Guy says you are gay. Okay, Lei, are any U.S. officials under CCP corruption? Are any U.S. officials under CCP corruption? A simple yes or no will suffice. I don't need details. Are any U.S. officials being corrupted by the CCP? Of course they are. If you look at the extensive effort the CCP has put out for the past decades, I'm not saying decades, to infiltrate US government, how could there not be US officials who are corrupt by the CCP? The answer is for sure a yes. Okay. Let me see if there are questions from David Lopan. What are your thoughts about the secret purchase near Travis Air Force Base? My thoughts is how can we allow it to happen? We should not have allowed it to happen. That's my thought. Can you own property in Taiwan? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Private ownership is respected in Taiwan because it's a market economy. From Mitsu, will you be covering the flooding of the Forbidden City? There has been a lot of flooding in China. I know Shanghai was flooded and the Forbidden City is flooded. I saw a social media post. Somebody said, you know, the ancient palace has survived flooding for 600 years until modern technology has upgraded the palace. And guess what happened? Next, flood. So that's the post that I saw that made me aware that the Forbidden City was flooded. But the post did reveal a truth. I mean, the palace survived flooding for hundreds of years, and now it looks terrible. The pictures looked terrible. Um, from Brian Smith, is there a known pool of possible replacements with the U.S. experience? There are certainly officials within the foreign ministry who are true US experts. But the question is, does Xi Jinping trust them? Having gone through this drama with Qin Gang, I think Xi Jinping would be very careful, extremely careful in picking his next candidate for the post, right? I mean, he will probably look at all the extramarital affairs they've ever had and figure out who those women were or are tied to. I think he's going to look at everything. So the question is not whether or not he has true American experts. Now the question is, well, who can he trust? And that's a difficult question to answer. And which one is clean in terms of their, not only can Xi Jinping trust them, and also are they really clean in terms of their personal life? And I mean, because now anything could become an international scandal now. So Silas Larson, do you have a sense of how closely the Chinese middle class and also the rural poor follow the news? Are people interested in party gossip? Yes, they are. Well, if they're on social media, then they are. Um, but I guess the extremely poor people, s- if you don't even have money to feed yourself, I guess you're not interested in, the mistresses of CCP officials. I mean, right? What you worry about is having food on the table every day. I guess then you're not interested in that sort of gossip. But otherwise, people are. I mean, that's their way by gossiping. That's their way to vent their frustration with the officials. Um, all right, Starry Night. How do you think things would end up in terms of the political with the foreign ministry? It's hard to say. I think the what we will see. I think Xi Jinping has really kept the door open for Qing Gang. So who knows if after a couple of months or some period of time, it depends. I mean, the Beidaihe meeting is coming up, right? The Beidaihe meeting where different factions within CCP would negotiate power or you know going over their binding arbitration over their disputes of sorts. That's coming up. If Xi Jinping iron out any issues with his political enemies and can provide an appropriate explanation internally about Qin Gang's predicament and situation, he may get him back. The reason why he wants to get him back is not because he cares so much about Qin Gang. It's really because he cares about his reputation, because his credibility and reputation and power goes down with Qin Gang, and that's why he wants to save him. So that it's a highly possible, as long as Qin Gang is not involved in any sort of anti-Xi Jinping maneuver or is compromised by foreign agencies, right? As long as he's not compromised, but any other small misdemeanor, um, I think it is okay. It's just a matter of how Xi Jinping handles the different voices internally. Um, from Jill Welsh, how does all of this affect Hong Kong politically and economically? Well, I think economically, I haven't really thought much about it because this is a political issue. I think the significance of this event politically on all CCP officials, whether they're in Beijing, Shanghai, or Hong Kong, or even they're diplomats in Washington or Paris, is that they have to be careful with the personal life because the case it shows it. Uh, because if you become unlucky and your personal life can be used as a weapon against you, and not just against you and against your mentor or your factional affiliation, it could be used against you. So I think they would be careful with their personal life. And I think that's a political impact on, and the officials in the diplomatic corps in China is, from what I heard, is very, how to say, is very promiscuous. Is that the word? In terms of their personal life and personal relationships. So they'd better they'd better clean up their act from this point, because this is a lesson. Not because CCP or Xi Jinping cares so much about whether or not you're a good husband or a good father, but because this can be weaponized against you. All right, let's see. From Ptolomeo Salamanca. How is your visit to Taiwan going? What's your favorite thing to do there? All right. Well, I love this question. How my visit was great. It was absolutely great. What's your favorite thing to do there? Well, my favorite thing happened on the second last day in Taiwan. A friend invited me to eat at a small restaurant, which I try to remember the name, and it serves local Taiwanese food. It was phenomenal. It was a little eatery, and I met her at a because the place was kind of hard to find. So she said, "Oh, meet me at McDonald's." And she said, "I'm not going to take you to eat at McDonald's, but we're going to go to this tiny place." And I said, only the only thing I ask is bring me to a place that has sufficient AC because it was so hot and so humid. And this place is very cool, in terms of both food and temperature. It has very sufficient AC. So I loved the place and the food was phenomenal. That was the highlight of my trip. Good AC and good food. All right. All right. Anyways, lettuce salad. Is the Qing Gang conspiracy a useful distraction? To who? To Xi Jinping or to the US? It depends, right? Um, from BK Lau, question. CCP apparently is making headwaves in Chinese diasporas in both Singapore and Malaysia. What do you think why overseas diasporas are so naive about CCP? Well, it's because they have good control over them, because the CCP has extensive apparatus or instruments established overseas in the overseas Chinese communities, whether it's in Singapore or the United States or Europe, to influence and control Chinese living overseas. I talked about that before. So if the foreign governments do not pay attention to these apparatus, then they will pay a big price, right? It's not because the Chinese Americans or the overseas Chinese are not trustworthy. It's because even though they live in Paris or New York or Japan, they're still subject to the brainwashing and then the coercive influence coming from Beijing. And that's an issue that I think foreign governments need to and must pay attention and address. From CHM, I joined halfway, and you might have answered whether or not Wang Yi is allied with any of Xi's rivals. Wang Yi he's a he's very smart diplomat politically. He is, for example, many people attribute China's wolf warrior diplomacy to him, but that's not really fair because Wang Yi used to be a soft-spoken and is soft-spoken the right word? Maybe a gentle, a more mild-toned diplomat. He wasn't a wolf warrior, but because Xi Jinping liked uh, that hardline approach to foreign countries. So Wang Yi adopted or picked up the wolf warrior, approach. So you see the change. He's really doing something to please his boss against his own personal style. So whichever faction that he belonged to is not important, but his loyalty and his willingness to please Xi Jinping, I think, has made a lasting impression on the top guy, and that's why he is still playing that role today. Okay, from Michael. Thank you. Oh, from Michael. The question. Where did the question go? The question disappeared. From Jeff Ramos, congrats on the interview with Taiwan News. Yes, it was my first interview in Taiwan. It was my first interview ever given. I'm gonna release that video tomorrow night so that you guys can watch it on my channel as well. I was surprised how well it turned out because I never gave any interviews. I was a little nervous about, doing an interview, but it really turned out okay, I guess. I appeared more confident than I am. All right. So, pat on my shoulder. Okay. Um, did I miss a super chat question? I saw a super chat question from Jeff Beaver. Okay. All right. Let me see. From Mitsu, has anyone considered teaching enough non-ethnically Chinese early, ethnically Chinese early so they can speak natively, then push back in journalism and elsewhere, a non-Chinese great translation movement? Has anyone considered teaching enough non-Chinese early so they can speak native, then push back in journalism and elsewhere? You mean teach non-Chinese speaking population Chinese so that they can discern so that they could be more aware of China affairs like native speakers do? I think that's a great suggestion. I think more people, if more Westerners speak Chinese, and maybe I don't need to be a YouTuber. Maybe you guys can do what I do and even better. So I think that's a great suggestion. From NTN, Xi Jinping humiliated, face blue smiling. But you're right. He may feel humiliated, but they are very thick-skinned, so they're not easily humiliated. Ferrari guy, have you seen the recent poll that shows opinions of China are underwater, below 50% with Chinese Americans, and far worse amongst Asian Americans and large parts of Asian region? I have not seen that poll, but I'm not surprised if that's the case. All right. Let me see. From Michael, do you see the US military industrial complex and media are intentionally overestimating Chinese prowess in tech and military? Do you know, or something's missing, that US military industrial complex and media are intentionally overestimating China's prowess? I'm not saying they're intentionally overestimating Chinese prowess in tech and military. I think they may do that. You're right. They may do that to raise awareness of the danger that the CCP poses. That may be the reason that why they do that, because the CCP is very dangerous. They're technically, and you're right, they're technically and militarily inferior to other advanced countries, particularly the United States, but they are dangerous because they're stronger in other areas that the US is not very good at. For example, manipulation, influence, infiltration, and the spy intelligence apparatus. They're all stronger in those areas, and that's why they are threatening. From Charles Womack, so is Qin Gang Fan Zheming, Fan counter-revolutionary now? Oh, 反革命? Sorry. 反革命. No, he's not. He's kept watch the beginning of my program. He's still kept the title of a state counselor. So that still makes him one of the top CCP officials in China. He's not a 反革命. Okay, I love that question. Adam Dest, what do you think about China's youth unemployment issues? Does the government have a way to fix this problem? Well, the CCP has been trying to fix this problem by doing a number of things, by trying to send them to countryside, right? but but that doesn't work. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to send the migrant workers who are from the countryside and work in the cities. They're trying to send them back to the countryside so they can vacate more positions for urban youth, because you have close to 3 million, no, 300 million migrant workers who are really peasants who work in the cities. So the CCP has passed regulations to force some of them to go back so that they could vacate these positions for urban youth. But the question is, will the urban youth want to take those positions? I do not think so. So um, that's, because those jobs are low paying, hard labor jobs, and the urban youth are not interested in taking those jobs. And if you think about the college graduates, like the college grads in Shanghai has an unemployment rate of over 66%, meaning two-thirds of them cannot find a job. And these people have a college degree and some have master's degree. So think about these highly educated young people. They don't want to go work in, um, take a blue collar job or work on assembly lines. So I think the CCP tried to come up with some solution. They also try to encourage them to join the military, but the recruitment, the military, the PLA's recruitment efforts have fallen short. They have to go back to the second round and the third round to fill the quota. They have not recruited enough young people. So they're trying, but I don't think they're able to fix this problem because the number of unemployed urban youth is large, is a tremendous number. It's not something that you can solve overnight. Um, Let me see questions um, from Jeff Beaver. Do you feel that US policymakers fully and appropriately consider the nuances and internal politics of the CCP versus viewing it as a monolithic organ of state control? Do I feel that US policymakers fully and appropriately consider the nuances and internal politics of the CCP? No. I don't think they have, I don't think they're fully aware of all the nuances of the political struggles within the CCP, precisely because they're too well trained. They have too much professional experience. They're too well trained in order to be willing to give up their preconceived notions about different behavior. They're professional diplomats, they're professional politicians, and they have well-conceived notions in their effort trying to understand what the CCP politics are all about. For example, I'll just give you one example. Was it the Washington Post that had an article a couple of days ago that reviewed how Qin Gang obtained this fast track promotions from Xi Jinping? The article, although it was an op-ed, but it still, I think, is it's not like a journalistic report, but it's an opinion of someone, but it still reviews the lack of good understanding of some of the Western experts. It said that Qin Gang's wife baked some kind of a mooncake, homemade mooncake, and gave them to Xi Jinping's wife, and thus gained the Xi Jinping and his wife's trust and favor, and was able to secure his promotion. And I heard a number of China experts laughed at that conclusion because, I mean, they're right. Anyone who's familiar with the CCP's politics would know that. I mean, Peng Liyuan, Xi's wife, is not in need of any food from anyone. And And it's highly unlikely that she can influence her husband over some baked sweets given by the wife of another CCP official. That's just pure imagination from the West, or whoever disclosed that information to this person was intentionally misleading the West, because it would be the opposite. What would happen would be Xi Jinping has already decided that he liked Qin Gang, that he wanted to promote Qin Gang. And that inevitably brought the two families a little closer. And to show their appreciation, his wife baked something and gave it to Xi Jinping's wife as sort of a thank you. That would make more sense, but not the other way around. A mooncake would not influence um, China's, should I say China's first lady? And she would not have so much influence on her husband's appointment. I don't think Xi Jinping would listen to what Peng Liyuan tell him. Oh, you should promote Qin Gang as the next prime minister because his wife baked us this amazing mooncake. That's fantasy. That's fantasy. That's I do not believe that, and so that's why I heard a couple of China experts say, how could they believe that? It's not true. Anyways, from Sumiland, once Putin said, "There's no point of the world if there's no Russia." Does Xi Jinping feel that way about China or the CCP? Um, I think in principle, theoretically, I agree. I agree that Xi Jinping would feel the same way about China. However, I think Xi Jinping is more practical than Putin. I think somehow Putin, I think maybe it's the difference between the Russians and Chinese. Um, I think the Chinese, particularly Xi Jinping, is very, very practical and pragmatic. Like someone said that, in his younger years, he went to this rally during the Cultural Revolution, and all of a sudden a fight broke out, and he went with two other buddies, and he immediately fled. He left immediately, and of the three of them, one guy was badly beaten and suffered concussion to his head. But Xi Jinping fled so fast that he escaped the attack. So the guy is very, very pragmatic. And take a look at zero COVID. He could make a 180-degree turn just to stay out of trouble for himself. So even though I agree with that statement that he would feel the same way about if there's no CCP, there would be no world. But on the other hand, if it threatens his life or if it's extremely dangerous, he would not risk everything. So that would be my answer to the question. It's an excellent question. All right, I will take a couple of more questions. Oh, from Chinese 小白脸儿. I love the name. How do I translate that? 小白脸儿. I can't even translate. Okay. We love you, Lei. Just wanted to let you know that you and your insights are greatly appreciated. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, 小白脸儿. Oh, this makes me laugh. All right. Okay. Let me see. Oh, from Master G Big. Thank you for the donation from Tex Marine. Keep up the great job. Thank you. I will. From Pow Pow. Love your videos. Keep up the great work. Thank you. From Robert Lopez. Thank you for standing up for the Chinese people and for educating the rest of us. Thank you. Thank you for your encouragement. All right. I'll thank you. And then I'll take a few more questions. Let's see. Von Sumiland, Xi is less emotional and better educated than Putin. Question mark? I think I can't really say he's better educated than Putin. Is he less emotional? I made a video about his drinking buddy revealed the emotional Xi Jinping. under the influence of alcohol. The real Xi Jinping can be emotional, right? So he is less likely to start a war that might end China. I hope so. That's a big question. So this you raised a very good question, but it's hard to answer because the question is whether or not you're really asking several questions in one, which is Xi Jinping emotional enough to start a war without considering the consequences? And and the second question um, is he really emotional, or can he get emotional over the Taiwan issue, right? Oh, and then the other question is, what kind of decisions will he make when he does become emotional? And will the Taiwan issue, Taiwan unification, make him emotional? So there are a number of questions. We need to answer all of them before we could come to the conclusion. Max Schroeder, do you teach Shanghainese to your kids? What is your opinion on the decline of this dialect? I do not speak Shanghainese very well, so no, I do not teach Shanghainese to my kids. Um, no. So I cannot speak Shanghainese very well, although my family speaks Shanghainese very well. From Poindexter Flex. Lei, my wife is Chinese. I live in China and I can see the willful ignorance. Are you standing up for people who want to remain ignorant? There are plenty here that choose not to know. I understand what you're saying. I understand why they show this ignorance. It's fear because they cannot afford to know. They fear the truth because the truth, with truth, you need to be courageous to embrace truth, because once you know the truth, you will not stand the lies the CCP um, spreads, and they know there are consequences. Then they cannot live in China anymore. For Westerners, it's easier because we could leave. We don't have to. Or I should say you, because I'm not a Westerner. But for Americans or Canadians, right? We can leave. We don't have to live there. But for them, it's hard. So try to understand them. Understand where they're coming from. It's fear, but it may come out very strong. They may be very opinionated and try to protect their system and their way of life. So you have to be patient with them. From Vicky Lewis, hoping your travels met your expectations. Thank you for taking the time. My travels met my expectations, except that I gained weight. I ate too much food. So, yes, it met my expectations, but it exceeded my expectations. And now I have to deal with the consequences of exceeding that expectation. Okay. All right, I'll take one more questions. Well, there are a lot of discussions. Uh, from point, I cannot leave. We have a daughter, but I see the point. Okay, yeah. In that case, the difference you have with your wife is not only there's a cultural gap between a Westerner and a Chinese. So culturally, you're different, right? So, and there's another gap that you have, that is the gap or the difference between people who were raised in a free society, who grew up having no fear of expressing themselves, versus someone who grew up in this totalitarian society and who has been programmed to think certain ways. And so oftentimes Westerners ignore the second difference. They only attribute any difference with Chinese as a cultural gap. Oh, that's just how Chinese are, or that's just the difference between a Chinese mind and an American mind. but no, but so there are two different uh the two different layers of differences. For the first layer, the cultural gap, I think is easier because I think as long as two people love each other, you can overcome the cultural differences. And sometimes the cultural differences, the opposite attract. It I think you could find the other person more interesting. But the difference between the second difference, I think, is a difference between our value systems, and that could be difficult to overcome, to bridge, because we have different values. You know, something that matters to you is not important to your wife, and that's more difficult to deal with. But you have to understand, you have to work on how, you know, this. I think it can be overcome over time if you bring her to live in the West, or if you make help your household follow a different value system, you know, than the one that's predominant in China. But the challenge is tremendous. I do see that. All right. So William Bruno Lei, where does Xi Jinping get information he can trust? That's a good question. Where does he get information he can trust? Well, there's only one place he can get information. That's from his subordinates. I don't see how he gets information. Does he get information from the internet? I don't know. You guys can help me. Maybe he gets information from the internet. He tells his family, "Hey, Google this and tell me, you know, what's being said." Maybe that is one source of his information. But for the most part, he gets information from his subordinates. But the question is, well, does he trust them? Well, I think that if you look at what has happened in China in the past couple of months, or if you look at what has happened to Qing Gang, or you know, if you look at the people that he has bringing down or he has reprimanded, a lot of them were promoted by him. So he is now removing the very people that he trusted. So why does he remove the people he trusted? So can he trust the people that he put in these positions? Probably not. Experiences tell him that he cannot trust them anymore. He thought he would trust them, but apparently not. So trust is a big issue for him. All right. Max Schroeder. Do you teach Shanghainese? Oh, I already answered that question. I kept getting that question. From Eric T. Styles. She watches this channel. I hope so. I hope so. Then I'm telling him, get rid of the CCP, because you know, I mean, that's the price you pay. You know, I think Xi Jinping's mistake is he tries to save the Communist Party when the party is unsavable. If he ends the Communist Party and started a democratic China, or at least just ends the CCP, he would become a hero like Gorbachev, right? But his mistake is he wrongfully believes that he can save the party by getting rid of the corrupt elements. He believes he's not corrupt. He believed by getting rid of all the corrupt elements, he could save the party, but he's going to get rid of everyone. So I hope he can figure that out. Robert Yu, do you speak other languages? I speak Chinese. I speak English. I studied French, and I did so well with French. My professor in college wanted to give me an A plus. He was surprised how a Chinese learning French in America as a second foreign language did so well. But I forgot most of it. I cannot say I speak French, but I love French. It's a beautiful language. I watched all the French movies in the school's library, whether or not I could understand everything that's said, but it was just to show you how much I love the French language. Okay, all righty. Um, all right, that's all for today. I thank you. It's been an hour, over an hour. I thank you very much for joining me. We should continue our discussion. I have a question from Sumiland. My helper. Is China or the CCP more important to Xi? I think that's an excellent question. We should make him think. I hope Xi Jinping sees China as being important and CCP not, because China as a country has thrived for thousands of years, but the CCP only has a history of a little over 100 years. And China is great. The party is not. And all his troubles, miseries, and bad luck comes from the party, not from China, not from Chinese people. So he should get that point. And if he's watching this channel, he should thank my viewers for reminding him that. So on that note, I thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, stay well. Bye bye.